On the night of May 14th, 2017, a satellite phone connected somewhere in the dark waters between Cuba and Florida. On the other end of the line was Isabella Hellmann, a mother, a wife, and a woman counting the hours until she could return home and hold her baby daughter again. Her voice sounded tired, different from usual, but her final words were calm and filled with quiet hope. "I'll see you tomorrow," she told her sister. She never did. By morning, Isabella had vanished into the open sea. There was no body, no witnesses, and no clear answers, only one man left behind to explain what had happened: her husband. He would later insist it was a tragic accident. But as investigators began to piece together the events of that night, they uncovered decisions so chilling and deliberate that they forced a disturbing question into the open. Did Isabella fall into the ocean by chance, or was the ocean chosen as the perfect place for someone to make her disappear forever? This is the Guilty Crime Stories. Isabella Hellmann was 41 years old and living what many would describe as the American dream. After leaving Colombia years earlier, she had built a new life for herself in Delray Beach, Florida, one shaped by determination, sacrifice, and quiet resilience. Isabella worked as a real estate agent with Signature Real Estate, where she was known for her warm smile, outgoing personality, and natural ability to connect with people. Colleagues saw her as someone still building her career, but clearly destined for long-term success. She lived in a modest yet beautiful condominium in West Delray Beach, a place she was proud to call home because it represented everything she had worked so hard to achieve. Her journey to the United States was not easy. Like many immigrants, Isabella came chasing opportunity and stability, willing to start from the ground up. She worked tirelessly, first becoming a naturalized American citizen, then steadily climbing her way into a professional career. Those who knew her described her as driven but gentle, ambitious, yet deeply caring. She didn't just want success for herself, she wanted security for her family, especially for her daughter. Motherhood was the center of Isabella's world. Her daughter Amelia, just 10 months old at the time, was the greatest joy of her life. Everything Isabella did revolved around her child. She worked long hours, planned carefully, and leaned on family support so Amelia would never feel a lack of love or stability. Friends and family said Isabella lit up whenever she talked about her daughter. Being Amelia's mother wasn't just a role, it was her purpose. Isabella was also deeply connected to her family. Her parents, Eduardo and Amparo, lived nearby in Boca Raton, along with her 3 sisters, Diana, Elizabeth, and Adriana. The family remained close-knit, holding on to their Colombian traditions while embracing life in America. They gathered often for meals, celebrations, and everyday moments that strengthened their bond. Isabella's mother played a key role in helping care for Amelia, something that brought Isabella immense comfort as a working mother. To those who loved her, Isabella was more than a real estate agent or an immigrant success story. She was a devoted daughter, a loving sister, and a mother whose life revolved around giving love to others. That is who Isabella Hellmann was, long before the ocean ever became part of her story. Lewis Richard Bennett entered Isabella Hellmann's life in 2014, and at first he appeared to be everything she didn't yet have: adventurous, worldly, and confident. Bennett was 42 years old, a mining engineer with dual citizenship in Australia and the United Kingdom, and an experienced sailor who had spent years navigating oceans across the world. Originally from Poole, Dorset, he carried himself as someone comfortable with risk and independence. Sailing wasn't a hobby for Bennett. It was a skill he had formally mastered. He held a Royal Yachting Association coastal skipper certification, which included training in emergency procedures, man-overboard protocols, and night sailing safety, knowledge that would later become deeply significant. Bennett's sailing experience was extensive. He had completed a demanding 3-month voyage from St. Martin to Australia, proving his ability to survive and operate under extreme conditions at sea. To those around him, he presented himself as capable, disciplined, and calm under pressure. This image of competence made him appear reliable and trustworthy, especially to someone like Isabella, whose life on land was structured around stability and family. Isabella and Bennett met online, and their relationship progressed quickly. What began as conversation soon turned into commitment. Within a relatively short time, Isabella became pregnant, and in July 2016, their daughter Amelia was born. Less than a year later, in February 2017, the couple married in a small, intimate ceremony. From the outside, their life looked promising: a successful real estate agent, an experienced sailor, and a new family beginning their future together. But beneath that surface, early warning signs were already present. Friends and family would later describe a relationship that moved too fast, leaving little room for deeper understanding or emotional stability. Bennett's adventurous nature often clashed with Isabella's need for security, routine, and family support. While he spoke of distant plans and life abroad, Isabella remained grounded in Florida, focused on her daughter and the family she depended on. What initially felt like excitement and passion would soon reveal itself as imbalance and tension. And as their lives became more intertwined, those early cracks, subtle at first, began to widen, quietly setting the stage for a tragedy no one could have imagined. Behind the images of a newly married couple, Isabella and Lewis Bennett's relationship was already under strain. Financial stress weighed heavily on the marriage. The couple owed thousands of dollars in credit card debt and struggled to keep up with payments, a situation that fueled constant tension. Money became a source of frequent arguments, exposing deeper problems in their relationship. But finances were only part of the issue. Isabella's family would later reveal that Bennett often spoke to her in ways that were demeaning and emotionally exhausting. Text messages recovered by investigators painted a troubling picture. In one message, Isabella wrote that Bennett shouted, yelled, and swore at her, leaving her emotionally drained. In another, she expressed how deeply his words hurt, saying she was tired of being told she was the worst person he had ever met, that everything she did was wrong. These messages revealed a pattern of emotional control that chipped away at Isabella's confidence and peace. Their biggest conflict centered on their daughter, Amelia. Bennett wanted to move to Australia and raise Amelia near his family and business interests. Isabella refused. Her life, her support system, and her career were in Florida. She would not leave her family behind. The disagreement was more than logistical. It was about control, and neither was willing to give in. Despite the growing strain in their marriage, Isabella and Bennett decided to take a belated honeymoon in April 2017, hoping the trip might repair what was already breaking. Leaving 10-month-old Amelia behind with Isabella's family was emotionally difficult, especially for Isabella, who had never been away from her daughter for long. Still, she tried to stay optimistic, believing time together might bring clarity or healing. The couple flew to St. Martin, where they boarded Bennett's 37-foot catamaran, Surf, into summer. The plan was ambitious: sail through Puerto Rico, then on to Cuba, before making the final journey back to Florida. Isabella told her sisters she was excited, but admitted she missed Amelia deeply, calling whenever she could to check on her daughter. Early into the voyage, something unsettling happened. Isabella's personal mobile phone broke, cutting off her main line of communication with her family. From that point forward, all contact depended on Bennett's satellite phone and emergency devices. What would later raise serious suspicion was Bennett's failure to activate the satellite phone or his personal locator beacon for much of the trip. As days passed with limited contact, a quiet unease began to settle, an unease that, in hindsight, would feel like a warning. On the evening of May 14, 2017, Isabella made what would become her final phone call. At 8:25 p.m., she contacted her sister Diana using the satellite phone as the couple sailed through open waters after leaving Havana, Cuba. Isabella explained that connecting the phone had been difficult and that they were now in the middle of the ocean, making their way toward Florida. Her voice was calm, but Diana noticed something unusual. Isabella didn't ask her usual detailed questions about baby Amelia. The warmth and excitement that normally filled their conversations felt muted, almost rushed. There was a subtle emotional shift, something unspoken but present. Isabella spoke briefly, as if conserving time or energy, and then ended the call. Her final words were simple and hopeful. "I'll see you tomorrow." It was a promise rooted in trust, in the belief that she would soon be home. It would be the last time anyone ever heard Isabella Hellmann's voice. According to Lewis Bennett, what happened next was nothing more than a tragic accident. He told investigators that later that evening, he asked Isabella to take control of the catamaran for the night watch while he went below deck to sleep. Despite Isabella's limited sailing experience, Bennett claimed this was a normal decision. What he did not require, however, raised immediate concern. Isabella was not asked to wear a life jacket, a safety harness, or a personal locator beacon, basic precautions, especially at night on open water. In the early morning hours of May 15th, Bennett said he was awakened by a loud crashing sound beneath the boat. When he climbed onto the deck, he claimed the sails and rigging were loose, the helm was unmanned, and Isabella was gone. He said she must have fallen overboard during the night, but his account quickly began to unravel under scrutiny. Despite being a highly trained sailor, Bennett admitted he could not remember whether he called out Isabella's name. He did not deploy parachute flares to illuminate the water. He did not attempt to search using the catamaran or its attached dinghy. He did not immediately activate emergency systems or call for help using the satellite phone. These omissions were not minor oversights. They directly contradicted the emergency procedures he had been trained to follow. Instead of searching for his wife, Bennett focused on something else entirely. The choices he made in those crucial moments would become some of the most damning evidence against him, revealing inconsistencies that suggested Isabella's disappearance was anything but accidental. What shocked investigators most was not only what Lewis Bennett claimed had happened, but what he admitted he did not do. After discovering that Isabella was missing, Bennett did not search the surrounding waters. He did not shout her name into the darkness. He did not deploy the parachute flares that could have illuminated the ocean and given Isabella even a small chance of being seen. Despite having both the catamaran and a dinghy available, he made no attempt to circle back or conduct a systematic search. Instead, Bennett spent the next 45 minutes preparing to abandon the vessel. But even that preparation raised troubling questions. Rather than prioritizing emergency communication or rescue equipment, Bennett carefully loaded personal belongings onto the life raft. Among the items he packed were a suitcase, 2 duffel bags, a backpack, food supplies, a radio transmitter, water, and even a tea set. More disturbingly, he also packed 9 plastic tubes containing 225 silver coins, coins that had been stolen and were worth thousands of dollars. Only after securing his valuables did Bennett cut the tether connecting the life raft to the catamaran and allow the boat to sink. Only then did he activate his emergency beacon and call for help. To experienced investigators, this sequence of actions suggested forethought rather than panic. A trained sailor would be expected to exhaust every possible rescue effort before abandoning ship. Bennett did the opposite, and the stolen coins would soon expose a much darker pattern of deception. At 1:30 a.m. on May 15, 2017, the U.S. Coast Guard received an emergency signal from Lewis Bennett's personal locator beacon, approximately 26 nautical miles west of the Bahamas. Hours later, at 4:30 a.m., a Coast Guard helicopter located Bennett floating alone in his life raft and transported him to the Florida Keys. From the moment he was rescued, his behavior raised immediate suspicion. Rescue personnel noted that Bennett appeared calm and composed, showing none of the visible distress one would expect from a man whose wife had just disappeared at sea. A rescue swimmer also noticed that Bennett's backpack was unusually heavy. Inside were the stolen silver coins he had gone to such lengths to save. When Coast Guard officials asked Bennett what actions he had taken to search for Isabella, his response was chilling in its simplicity. "I did not do anything." Those words echoed through the investigation, reinforcing the growing belief that Isabella Hellmann's disappearance was not an accident, but the result of deliberate, calculated choices made in the dark of the open ocean. Within hours of Lewis Bennett's rescue, the U.S. Coast Guard launched one of the largest search and rescue operations the region had ever seen. For 4 relentless days, from May 15th to May 18th, aircraft and cutters scoured nearly 5,000 square nautical miles of open ocean. The operation consumed 137 hours and covered an area larger than some small countries. Crews searched day and night, holding on to the hope that Isabella might somehow still be alive. That hope was crushed when the search was officially suspended on the evening of May 18th. But just 1 day later, Bennett made a request that stunned investigators. He asked the Coast Guard for a letter declaring Isabella presumed dead. To experienced agents, the timing was deeply unsettling. FBI investigators noted that most spouses cling to hope long after searches end. Bennett's urgency suggested something else entirely: certainty. As one investigator later remarked, it was far too early for a husband who truly wanted his wife found alive. Isabella's disappearance shattered her family. Her parents and sisters had been waiting for her return from the honeymoon, expecting to welcome her home to baby Amelia. Instead, they were forced to confront the unthinkable. In the days that followed, the family initially supported Bennett, believing he was grieving the same loss, but his behavior quickly began to disturb them. 2 weeks after Isabella vanished, Bennett arrived at the family's Boca Raton home, accompanied by a police officer. He claimed Isabella's family had taken his personal belongings and demanded their return. What happened next was captured on the officer's body camera, creating some of the most painful footage in the case. As Bennett prepared to leave, Isabella's mother begged him not to take baby Amelia away. The child was already strapped into his car. Isabella's sister Elizabeth, overwhelmed by grief and suspicion, screamed that he had already killed her sister and asked what more he wanted. At one point, Isabella's mother collapsed to the ground, sobbing at the thought of losing her granddaughter forever. The police officer suggested that Bennett allow the family to hold Amelia one last time. Bennett refused. The following day, he purchased one-way tickets to the United Kingdom and left the country with Amelia, cutting off all contact with Isabella's family. In that moment, their grief deepened into fear, and investigators' suspicions hardened into resolve. While Isabella's family grieved, investigators turned their attention to the one silent witness that remained: the catamaran Surf into Summer. During the search operation, the partially sunken vessel had been located and documented by the U.S. Coast Guard. What experts found would dismantle Lewis Bennett's version of events. Photographs and video footage revealed damage that did not match an accidental collision. Instead, there were holes in nearly identical locations on both hulls, something maritime experts immediately found suspicious. Even more alarming, 2 underwater escape hatches were discovered in the open position. Opening both hatches would have caused rapid flooding and would never occur accidentally. A nautical architecture expert from the U.S. Coast Guard Academy analyzed the evidence and reached a clear conclusion: the vessel had been intentionally scuttled. There was no plausible scenario in which an accident could explain the symmetrical damage or the open hatches. The boat itself told the truth. Isabella's disappearance was part of a deliberate plan. As evidence mounted, investigators began to understand Bennett's motive. Isabella's death would resolve every conflict in his life at once. It would end their troubled marriage, grant him sole custody of Amelia, and allow him to raise their daughter wherever he chose. It would also give him access to Isabella's estate. But the financial motive extended even further. The stolen silver coins found on the life raft and later the gold coins discovered in the couple's condominium linked Bennett to a broader pattern of theft. Those coins had been stolen from a yacht in St. Martin a year earlier, while Bennett was working as crew. He had even filed a false police report pretending to be a victim. This pattern of deception mirrored his behavior after Isabella vanished. When Bennett returned to the United States in August 2017 for an insurance interview, the FBI was ready. He was arrested and later pleaded guilty to transporting stolen goods, receiving a 7-month prison sentence. But that was only the beginning. On February 20, 2018, the FBI arrested Lewis Bennett on second-degree murder charges for the death of Isabella Hellmann. As the case moved toward trial, prosecutors faced a difficult challenge, proving premeditated murder on the open sea without a body. Bennett ultimately agreed to a plea deal, pleading guilty to involuntary manslaughter instead of murder. Isabella's family strongly opposed the agreement, believing the evidence clearly showed deliberate intent, but prosecutors argued that the risks of a full trial were too great. In November 2018, Bennett appeared in federal court for sentencing. He read a prepared apology, expressing regret for the pain he claimed to have caused and asking for leniency so he could reunite sooner with Amelia. The judge was unmoved. Lewis Bennett was sentenced to the maximum of 8 years in federal prison, ordered to pay restitution to Amelia, and placed on supervised release. The court made it clear this was not a tragic accident. It was a crime with consequences. Isabella Hellmann's story did not end in the courtroom. Her daughter Amelia, now growing up in Scotland, remains connected to both sides of her family. In a powerful act of grace, Isabella's family chose forgiveness, not for Bennett's sake, but for Amelia's future. They understood that she deserved love, stability, and the truth about the mother who cherished her. Isabella is remembered not for the way she died, but for the life she lived. A devoted mother, a loving daughter, a sister who brought warmth and joy to everyone around her. Her legacy lives on in Amelia and in the memories held by those who refused to let her name fade into silence. This was not just a crime at sea. It was a betrayal of trust, love, and life itself. Please remember Isabella Hellmann. And this has been The Guilty Crime Stories.